I would say first, the grass is always greener. So a lot of times people will say, oh, or I thought this, if I just get out of this job or this environment, or if I work at a smaller place, it will be better for me. I'll have a better work-life balance, or whatever the things you don't like about your work, you won't have to deal with anymore. It's not always true. And so my first recommendation is that you increase your circle to include, or your network to include, people who do the type of work in the type of place that you're interested in doing. So if you're in a multinational firm and you want to work for something more regional, I don't like the international travel, or it's pulling me away from home at the wrong time of year, whatever it is, talk to people who do that and see whether the things that are troubling you about your current place will be solved by working in that different environment. That's one. And I think that that's a good idea anyway. And if, I don't know, it depends on how far along in your career as to how much legwork that will take for you to make those connections. But this is one place where I think LinkedIn is actually very, very helpful, because I have a lot of times, even if I'm looking for a speaker for something at the law school now, at Columbia, I now have the privilege of working with international lawyers who are sophisticated and ambitious and further along in their career. So I bring in different speakers to talk about different things during their Executive LL.M Program. And if I'm looking for someone, I'll go on LinkedIn and see if we know anyone in common. And that's a really great way to increase to have an, and then I'll contact the person. Hey, I see that so-and-so, can you make an introduction for me? I'm interested in having them come. Or if we're even second, your second degree removed, I'll try to find someone that can connect us, or someone that works at the same location. So that's one thing. And I think people are really happy to talk about themselves. I think that is something that's just like innate to people. They love to tell their story or talk about themselves. And so people are usually real generous with their time. So that's one thing I would say. And the other is, don't hesitate. If you're unhappy, do not hesitate to make a move. Or even if you're able, if you have the financial stability to do that, stop doing what you're doing to give yourself the space to find something you would rather do. I think that's very hard for us to do. And some people, it's not possible. I mean, some people, it's purely there's financial reasons why they just cannot afford to do that. But if you can, because I feel like what happens when we're working and we're working a lot, you need some time and and you need permission, I think, to explore and looking for a job is really a full-time job. It's very hard to do while you're also working. But we spend so much of our time working that it's just a shame if you're not doing something that you love. Now, you're not going to love all of it all of the time. Obviously, there are things we all don't like about the work that we do, but we're giving up time with our families and with our kids and with ourselves. And you just deserve to love what you do. And so, don't hesitate to start making moves to that, towards that end, whatever it is. Which is, I would recommend talking to other people who are doing the jobs to make sure that it is what you think it's going to be. Oh, and one more thing, prioritize people. I want to mention that, because I think even if the work that you do is not what you love, if you're doing it with people who are good people, who are working hard, who are elevating you in some way, then at least it's not all a lost cause, right? At least it's not all for nothing. At least you have had a positive people experience. And I do think at the end of the day, as we look back on our careers, it is all about people. I mean, it really is about the people that we are serving or the people that we are working with as to how fulfilling your career ends up being. If you have the clarity of, the vision of what you want to do, then thinking about that job and then working backwards. So I found that helpful to think, if I would have known, okay, criminal is what I want to do, talk to people who are doing that. How did they get there? And then plan out my journey. I think that is I do mazes from backwards too. So I think that's just maybe the way I think. My son says, that's not the way you're supposed to do them. But I think looking to where you want to go and then finding out the steps to get there that's a helpful way for me to think about it. So that's one thing. And the second thing is, I would have learned a second language. I think that just helps you career-wise, no matter what you end up doing. So those are two, kind of, I don't know, more fun tidbits of looking back. Not that I necessarily regret anything, but I would have made different decisions. And I think maybe people are fooling themselves if they don't think that when they look back on their lives, that it would have been just an easier time. But it's a learning process. And I tell students now that you will rarely have the dream job right out of the gate. It's going to take you a little bit of time. Usually, I mean, there are people who I'm envious of that just know it exactly where they're going and how they're going to get there. And that's a wonderful thing if that works for you. But think about your life. It changes. When I started my career, I was a young, single, woman in New York. And now I'm like an old married mother of two. So like my life has undergone a dramatic transition that makes the priorities in my job different. And I think that will be true for a lot of women, especially as you move through whatever it is that you want in life. As you move through that journey, your values and your priorities will change. And so just remember that it's a process and a journey. And even when you're in the low points or you're in the kind of darker days where you're like, I cannot believe I have to do this again, go to this job again, do this work again, that as long as you're taking steps to move towards something more positive, that you'll feel okay about it. You'll realize that it is just part of your journey, your life professional journey. So